Luffy chose to stay behind and face Big Mom's strongest son Katakuri, to ensure the safety of his crew in the Sunny. The crewmates initially viewed this decision as foolish, thinking their captain was sacrificing himself unnecessarily, especially since Luffy broke the only mirror connecting them to the ship, preventing anyone from infiltrating the Sunny. However, Katakuri understood the danger Luffy posed. If Luffy were to return unharmed, he would become a threat to Big Mom. Katakuri skillfully avoided all of Luffy's attacks. Demonstrating his superior abilities, he taunted Luffy, suggesting that he could keep dodging indefinitely. Luffy, however, remained persistent and continued to use various techniques, determined to overcome Katakuri. Despite the odds stacked against him, Luffy refused to give up. At the same time, the crew members also learned that Luffy had entered the mirror world. They all believed their captain would come back, but the more pressing concern was where Pedro was. Upon hearing this, Carrot panicked and Nami explained to those who didn't know that he had gone away forever. Everyone felt sorrow and self-blame, knowing they couldn't protect their comrade. However, they understood that facing a Yonko who had ruled the seas for many years was never easy. Jinbei lifted everyone's spirits, reminding them that this ordeal was far from over. "Save your tears for our enemies," he said, as Pedro had already prepared himself for this fate by choosing to go with them. With renewed determination, they prepared to face Big Mom's pursuing fleet. Just when they managed to stabilize their lineup, they saw Big Mom herself along with hundreds of ships blocking their way. The reason she could move on the sea was thanks to the abilities of Perospero. This meant that Pedro's sacrifice had been in vain. Carrot couldn't accept it, especially because this monster had only lost one arm. He was extremely resentful and vowed to exact revenge for his tribe. The scene shifts to Sanji, who is still on his way to create the cake that could save them all, accompanied by Chiffon and his bride Pudding. Luffy and Katakuri's intense battle continues unchanged. Katakuri can predict every move Luffy makes, making it nearly impossible for Luffy to land a hit. Katakuri's Devil Fruit ability is incredibly powerful, creating punches that resemble Luffy's own techniques. Despite taking all the hits, Luffy refuses to fall and stands his ground. In terms of spirit and ability, the difference between a bounty of 1 billion and Luffy's level is apparent. Luffy still believes that Rubber can overcome Mochi and charges at Katakuri again. However, he ends up getting pummeled, his face taking a beating, even though he has increased his speed. Due to the inherent stretchiness of Rubber, Luffy bounces back, inflates his body, and redirects the force into his fist, creating a colossal punch. However, Katakuri counters with an even larger and more powerful punch, astonishing his subordinates. Their fists clash, but Katakuri's Mochi punch overwhelms Luffy, sending him crashing into the wall. Feeling his arm not functioning properly, Luffy switches to using both hands. Despite this, Katakuri analyzes the situation and counterattacks with a stronger blow. This time the impact is not only strong but sticky, causing Luffy to be thrown aside. Seeing this, Luffy changes the airflow to his legs and crashes downward, forcing Katakuri to release his grip. Katakuri recognizes his advantage and decides to imitate Luffy's techniques to mock him. After this clash, Luffy checks the ground cautiously. On the other side, the three individuals had arrived at Cacao Island. Utilizing her acting skills, Pudding managed to deceive everyone on the island into agreeing to help. Everything had been meticulously prepared, including the presence of exceptional chefs. They decided to prepare everything by hand to ensure the best flavor for the cake. Meanwhile, the group on the ship was facing a difficult situation. Big Mom's specialized combatants were also on their way. However, they didn't have enough ingredients for another launch. Perospero was confident that he could defeat them all. They checked in on the condition of Straw Hat's captain and found him still recovering. At this point, their only hope rested on the single trump card, the cake that Sanji and his team were preparing. Pudding adjusted the memories of the chefs to make them more enthusiastic in helping Sanji. Chiffon was amazed when the young chef, Sanji, could discern all the ingredients with just one look. Little Pudding reassured the chefs that their memories had been altered so they could work without worries. The chefs were astonished at Sanji's ability to create such an exquisite cake. He assigned specific tasks to each person. Chiffon would handle the baking while Pudding would take care of the chocolate part. Sanji would complete the final stage with his secret recipe. They had a little over 2 hours to finish the cake and transport it to Big Mom's mouth. They planned to transport the cake to the ship while sailing, keeping it in pristine condition. Then they would regroup with the other members of the crew. Returning to Luffy, after hearing the taunts from his opponents directed at Pedro, he stood up once more. Luffy channeled all his anger into a punch aimed directly at his foe, but to no avail. None of his punches landed as intended. Instead he was easily pushed back, making the fight seem tedious. Katakuri was no longer playing around. He unleashed a barrage of punches, upgraded by Luffy's own techniques, sending Luffy reeling and ultimately causing him to collapse. Meanwhile, Katakuri's siblings found the 2 remaining mirrors on the ship and planned to destroy them. Katakuri confronted Luffy, forbidding him from interfering with his siblings. Despite Luffy's attempts to shatter the mirrors, all his efforts were rendered futile. In the midst of all this, the siblings set the changing room on fire. Since everyone on the ship was focused on the external threat, no one noticed what was happening inside. Countless cannons were aimed at them, but luckily Jinbei expertly steered the ship, narrowly avoiding the onslaught. Any stray shots were deflected by Chopper and Brook. Nami, hearing Luffy's voice through a fragment of the broken mirror, tried to warn everyone about the mirrors and the fire. Brook discovered the raging fire inside, prompting Luffy to decide to destroy all the mirrors to find another way to reunite with his crew. However, Katakuri did not allow Luffy to breathe, let alone leave the scene. The situation on Cacao Island became even more tense as some ingredients were running low. Sanji remained calm, providing recipes to compensate for the missing flavors. Despite being enemies, Sanji had no intention of harming those who would consume his food. He meticulously balanced everything, especially concerning women. Pudding was captivated by Sanji, her eyes sparkling with admiration. On Nami's end, she heard Luffy's cries of pain and grew extremely worried. Despite his condition, Luffy urged Nami to quickly break all the mirrors before they could infiltrate the ship and cause havoc. However, this wasn't the most serious issue at hand. A candy wave had been created to engulf everything, with Big Mom the Dangerous riding on it. This sight brought tears to Nami's eyes as she apologized to Luffy. Everyone was terrified by the current situation, except for Jinbei, the man born beneath the sea, who managed to keep his calm. He instructed everyone to adjust the sails according to his directions and used one hand to steer the ship. Nami relayed the wind directions to him and Jinbei skillfully adjusted the sails, leaving everyone in awe. This move was strategic to avoid being caught up by the candy wave, and it struck fear into their hearts because it meant they would be caught if they didn't keep up. Without much explanation, Jinbei steered the Sunny toward the rushing candy wave, seemingly getting swallowed by it. However, when they opened their eyes, they found themselves not sinking but sailing inside it. Jinbei explained that these waves were actually the most enjoyable game for the Fishman children, and he, understanding the mechanics, navigated the ship through the gateway of death. Everyone was left astounded when they realized that Jinbei was the master of this space. The enemies above had never considered this possibility, so they were caught off guard and found the situation rather amusing. Inside the mirror world, the people there sensed something was wrong because there was no water inside the ship. The mirrors shattered, indicating that they were safe and following Luffy's instructions. Nami told everyone to obey Luffy's orders, which brought relief to him, enabling him to fight more comfortably. Chopper continuously asked his little friend if he was okay. Taking advantage of the situation, Luffy concealed himself in a corner to communicate with the others. They assured him that everything was fine and Nami devised a plan for him. After defeating Katakuri, Luffy was to regroup with Sanji's team at the rendezvous point. As she finished speaking, Katakuri appeared and captured Luffy using Mochi. The mirror communication was severed due to Katakuri's attack. Luffy quietly kept the remaining mirror shards in his mouth to maintain contact and attempted to escape. But Katakuri predicted his every move. Luffy endured billions of kicks, spewing out the broken shards, but to reassure everyone, he accepted the situation and told them to hurry to the rendezvous point while he followed behind. Everyone was relieved to hear this, not realizing the danger their captain was in. Luffy cut off communication and turned back to face his impending doom. The scene shifts to Big Mom's children, who are trying to capture Germa's technology but are being ruthlessly beaten by Sanji's older brothers and sisters. Katakuri has decided to put an end to the fight and prevents Luffy from attacking Brûlé. He strikes Luffy, causing immense pain, but Luffy manages to evade using Haki to save himself. This powerful attack also causes part of the wall to collapse, potentially killing some people. Katakuri introduces his peculiar sibling Mole and asks Luffy if he'd like to have a part of him cut off. Luffy refuses and continues to evade, trying to find an opportunity to strike back. Luffy is determined to keep fighting, and he's oblivious to the fact that Brûlé overheard his conversation with his crewmates earlier. Back in the mirror world, Brûlé informs Perospero of the Straw Hat Pirates' rendezvous point, surprising him because he believed they were all defeated. He had intended to deceive Big Mom into going to Cacao Island, but she was too hungry to agree to his plan. Big Mom arrives at Cacao Island, which shocks Perospero as he didn't expect her to be so close. Katakuri relentlessly launches attacks at Luffy, advising the young pirate to give up because he has predicted all of Luffy's moves. Despite Luffy's resilience, Katakuri easily counters his every action by seeing several seconds into the future. Maintaining his dominance over the battle, Luffy manages to dodge Katakuri's attacks, frustrating him further, but he wonders why he can't land a blow even though he's using Haki. In contrast, Katakuri continuously targets Luffy's dodge points. Katakuri comments on Luffy's performance, acknowledging that he's one of the few who managed to dodge so many of his attacks. He proceeds to launch a spiked mochi attack, and Luffy barely evades it but is pinned down by Katakuri's trident. Luffy is pressed against the ground and defiantly taunts Katakuri for trying to predict his movements. The two engage in a brief power struggle, and Luffy extends his leg to grip the trident with his foot. Katakuri, caught off guard, does not anticipate this move. Luffy is able to break free, taking advantage of Katakuri's oversight and his gum-gum abilities. With a triumphant grin, Luffy captures the trident with his foot and manages to save himself from Katakuri's attack. However, Katakuri swiftly restrains Luffy with his mochi, and Luffy's moment of triumph is short-lived. Katakuri captures him alive, and Luffy realizes that this bizarre power works similarly to Doflamingo's strings. Luffy is ready to use a conquering Haki, but Katakuri quickly sees through his plan and doesn't give him a chance. Moving the scene to Big Mom's ship, the children of Big Mom are not old enough compared to the offspring of the rulers of the South Sea. The news of the defeat of the Devil Fruit Army has also been reported back to Big Mom's crew. But the unfortunate part is that the news was fabricated by Sanji's unruly brother. This group has decided to set sail once again to repay the Straw Hat crew and save their foolish brother Sanji. As for Luffy, he was planning to use Gear 4th, but was continuously disrupted by Katakuri's punches. Afterward, Katakuri used mochi to restrain Luffy's hands because it was time for his snack break. Enormous drops of mochi were created, burying Luffy alive, and he couldn't escape. Katakuri didn't want it to end like this, but it was time to eat. However, due to Luffy's luck, he managed to deceive the creature and avoid being noticed. In the distance, professional chefs arrived with Katakuri's favorite food, cakes and tea. Everything was made from rare ingredients, except the tea had gone cold because Katakuri had been toying with Luffy for too long. He created a house out of mochi and warned the chefs not to let anyone come near. This habit of not allowing anyone to witness his eating had been maintained for a long time. While boasting, Luffy was nowhere to be seen, shocking everyone. The drops of mochi began to stir and the ravenous creature emerged. Looking like a giant ball, Luffy had utilized his ability to eat like he was starving to escape. However, Katakuri was eating, so the chefs lied, saying that he wasn't there. Luffy wasn't foolish enough to fall for that and headed toward the house. It was thought that Luffy would disrupt Katakuri's meal, but he ran in the opposite direction, leaving the chefs in surprise. However, just 2 seconds later they couldn't laugh anymore because the round and chubby Luffy had returned to his slim form. They tried to stop him, but Luffy refused and flew up, blowing off the roof. Katakuri, still blissfully unaware, continued eating, displaying his huge mouth. When he realized that he had lost his dignity in front of his younger sister, Katakuri flew into a rage, scolding the chefs. Everyone who saw him eat had to die, especially Luffy. This time he was serious and used advanced observation Haki, hitting Luffy continuously. Luffy also used advanced observation Haki, but his was not as refined, so his hands burned upon contact. Katakuri didn't give Luffy a moment's rest and hit him again, causing Luffy to struggle. Despite that, Luffy sensed something and countered, surprisingly dealing damage to the billion berry creature. From this point, Katakuri was able to dodge Luffy's attacks effortlessly, giving Luffy a new perspective on Katakuri's abilities. Because of this, Luffy activated Gear 4th, declaring that Katakuri was strong but not invincible. Katakuri, in a fit of rage, awakened his devil fruit power, attacking Luffy. However, in this form Luffy was much stronger and faster, rushing straight at Katakuri. Katakuri was taken aback and received a powerful blow from Luffy. Although he managed to block it, the force was immense, sending Katakuri flying hundreds of meters away. Luffy recalled all the lessons he learned from Rayleigh, knowing that Haki was the key to fighting Logia users. Katakuri, being a Paramecia user, couldn't escape being hit. Luffy kept landing blows on him, causing Katakuri to gasp for air. He stated that the issue didn't lie in his mochi power but in his advanced observation Haki, which he had mastered to the level of enlightenment. He landed one more hit on Katakuri's back, making him collapse to the ground. Although he didn't want to be defeated in front of his little sister, he decided to sacrifice his dignity and let his neck be hit instead of his back. Luffy seized this opportunity and delivered a finishing blow. But it didn't work because Katakuri remembered who he was. He praised Luffy for understanding a bit and admitted that he only changed the structure of his body to avoid attacks, not to show off. But to his ability to see the near future, this became much easier. Luffy was fortunate to be the one fighting Katakuri who, after countless years of invincibility, finally felt challenged. Luffy's arm was also tightly stuck and couldn't be pulled out. From this point, Katakuri used his own techniques rather than Luffy's. He summoned two arms covered in advanced armament haki and punched Luffy directly, causing him to lose consciousness for a moment. Transitioning to Cacao Island, Brûlé made a call to her sister and inquired about the cake. Meanwhile, she disclosed the Straw Hat Pirates' plan. Unaware that her sister was an ally of the Straw Hats, Brûlé didn't suspect anything. However, a more pressing concern arose as a dangerous foe. Oven appeared on the scene. Pudding, knowing that Katakuri was unbeatable, worried about Luffy and the Straw Hat crew. In the meantime, Sanji, upon hearing this, merely laughed and confidently stated that today would be the day he proved he wouldn't fail. But is that true? When Katakuri regained his composure and foresaw the future again a few seconds ahead, all the current attacks were blocked just like before. He utilized the stickiness of his mochi to trap Luffy and threw him away. Everything around him under his control resisted Luffy. Indeed, at this moment, Katakuri was much stronger than before. Transitioning to the Hachinosu Island, as they knew their mother was about to arrive, Big Mom's children decided to evacuate the residence rather than confront the situation. However, things became more critical when the Big Mom pirate sea slugs were disabled, rendering them unable to locate the Sunny's position. Bega's crew was heading to Cacao Island to pick up his wife because Big Mom's ship was no longer visible. The one responsible for this was another child of Big Mom, a woman who was crossbred with a fishman, capable of mesmerizing 10,000 sea slugs to dance together. At this point, their work was quite redundant. The reason she did this was that her husband Bej was a subordinate of Jinbei. The fishmen valued emotional connections highly, so this act was to aid him and his new allies in overcoming the peril. Meanwhile, back to Luffy, Katakuri informed him that his body was shrinking, making Luffy realize that his time in Gear 4th was running out. So he bid a temporary farewell. However, it was not as simple as that. This was Katakuri's playground, not a place where Luffy could just come and go. Moreover, Luffy was already overexerted, running out of stamina. Fortunately, this wasn't his first time, so he had enough strength left for a run. Behind him, Katakuri kept pounding him. Suddenly, Luffy stopped and turned to look at something. Wasn't this the last thing he needed right now? The power to penetrate Brûlé's mirror. Luffy smirked and captured her, forcing her into one of the mirrors, leaving Katakuri frustrated. She was almost harmless to Luffy, so he felt a bit relieved. Unfortunately, in his misfortune, he ended up in the very place where Big Mom was wreaking havoc. On this side, Nami's group felt uneasy as their enemies were no longer in sight, and indeed their worries were valid. The enemies had devised another plan to thwart their intentions. Of course, this time, there were commanders accompanying them, ensuring the complete destruction of the Straw Hat crew. Sanji managed to create a delightful dessert that made anyone who tasted it feel heavenly, nearly wanting to die from the bliss. Chiffon's exquisite baked cake was also completed, paired with Pudding's top-tier chocolate. These three items had the potential to save everyone if they could reach Big Mom's refined and discerning taste buds. The Hungry Island was currently experiencing Big Mom's insatiable hunger. Suddenly, their enemies who were not in alignment with Big Mom appeared on the island. Immediately they became the new targets. Fortunately, they managed to evade capture, but they had to face the wrath of the commanders. Perospero created a candy wall to trap the audacious Nami, attempting to take Luffy's life. However, he failed in his endeavors. He also conjured candy tendrils for his formidable elder sister to chase after Luffy, sending him into a frightened frenzy, desperately searching for a mirror. Meanwhile, Sanji's cake was being transported to the port. Unfortunately, Chiffon was present and fell under Oven's watchful eye. He pressed his younger sister's head down as punishment for her husband's betrayal. Witnessing this, Sanji prevented Pudding from intervening, advising her to wait for the right moment. If not, their entire plan would crumble into the abyss. On the other side, Luffy managed to find a new mirror, but before he could enter it, it was shattered. Luckily, the attackers couldn't underestimate Luffy, and they were also dealing with a hostage situation, so both sides were cautious. The situation turned into a cat and mouse game. Whenever Luffy faced a difficult situation, he would use Brûlé to escape. Unfortunately, Big Mom, driven by her insatiable hunger, spotted Luffy and didn't hesitate to attack them with her devastating powers. As for Chiffon, she had no regrets helping the Straw Hat crew because they had saved her twin sister. At this moment her father, trying to protect his daughter, confronted the enemies. Sanji used this opportunity to swiftly intervene, surprising everyone, and rescued Chiffon discreetly. Unfortunately, the unfortunate father suffered the consequences for his outburst. Owen, smart enough to realize Chiffon's location, captured her once again. Just then Owen received news that Bege and his team were approaching, filling him with joy as his enemies had come to him. Bege and his crew were extremely confident as they raced at full speed to rescue Chiffon. Back to Luffy, he was fortunate to slip into the mirror world before Big Mom's deadly attack reached him. However, this action led Katakuri to track him down for an attack. Luckily, with numerous mirrors around, Luffy managed to escape safely, buying time to recover his haki. Meanwhile, on Sanji's end, Oven had contacted Bege and demanded their surrender. Chiffon pleaded with her husband to leave immediately, but Bega's love for his wife made him disregard the threat and continue forward. Oven was gleeful, thinking he had captured a big fish. However, in his arrogance, he unknowingly ate a candy bullet shot by Bege from a distance. Bege was a top-class marksman and his accuracy was unparalleled. Moving back to the Sunny, everyone aboard had noticed that several battleships were closing in on them. However, Carrot seemed more interested in whether tonight was a full moon or not. She asked Chopper about it. As for Oven, after eating the candy bullet, he went into a rage and burst into flames. Bege, in his fortress form, accelerated to its maximum speed, intending to ram it directly into the shore. The people on the other ships thought they were dealing with madmen. However, Bega's ship was not only a ship but also a tank, so it easily climbed over and crushed any obstacles in its path. Sanji instructed everyone to maintain their speed while he jumped off the Sunny to gain momentum. Just as the two sides were about to collide, he kicked all the wedding cakes upward onto Bega's ship. As for Luffy, after his playful escapades in the mirror world, Brûlé revealed that she had overheard the Straw Hat Pirates' plan and advised Luffy to surrender. Luffy paid no attention to her advice and pondered a way to defeat Katakuri. Memories from 2 years ago resurfaced, reminding him that facing stronger adversaries only made him stronger. It seemed like he had found an answer to the question called Katakuri. As soon as the 10-minute time limit ended, he found himself back in the mirror world, facing the Billion Belly Beast once again. Meanwhile, Sanji's group managed to safely transfer the cake onto the ship. Their only challenge now was Oven, who stood in front of them like a tank, shouting that he would stop them, but as everyone expected, he was easily defeated. Just like that, Bega's ship pierced through whole Cake Island, seemingly allowing them to escape safely. However, the atmosphere suddenly grew more intense. The sea around them began to hot and bubble, and the one responsible for this madness was none other than Oven. He was far from weak and was determined to cook every single person on the ship. The helm of the ship was overloaded and exploded, putting everyone in grave danger. Just at that moment, Brûlé's mysterious and heroic grandfather emerged to save his descendants. When Oven swung his club at the old man, he retaliated, creating an opportunity for Bega's crew to escape. In the end, this courageous act cost him his life, ensuring the survival of his family. Meanwhile, Nami's group was being closely pursued. Big Mom, in her furious quest for the cake, had closed in on them, and the Sunny was under attack from multiple sides. The rematch between Luffy and Katakuri was unfolding, a battle that was still fierce and full of hardship. What surprised Katakuri the most was not just Luffy's refusal to escape but his decision to turn back and face him again. Luffy, on the other hand, was determined to defeat Katakuri and ordered him to come back. He immediately launched a barrage of attacks in Katakuri's direction, but they were all deftly dodged. Outside, it was getting darker and Jinbei had concerns about the blockade led by Daifuku. Daifuku was a powerful opponent and one of the top bounty earners in the Big Mom Pirates. Behind Daifuku is his daughter. One of the strongest members of the Smoothie was also approaching. Daifuku asked his elder brother if he could sink the Straw Hat Pirates ship, and the answer was affirmative. The situation grew tenser as Big Mom's hunger pangs continued, causing her to visibly lose weight. Nami remained calm and assigned tasks to the crew members. Chopper the Doctor prepared for combat with the approaching enemies. Carrot had her own plan for revenge against Daifuku and his fleet. Jinbei inquired if she intended to transform into a Sulong, a powerful form of the Mink tribe, and Carrot assured him that she had been trained by Pedro and could control the transformation. Carrot then unleashed her Sulong form, which was astonishing to all who witnessed it. It was a powerful and awe-inspiring sight. As the Mink tribe revealed their true strength for the first time in front of their enemies, Carrot displayed incredible speed darting across the water's surface, and her electrical abilities became greatly enhanced. She incapacitated any adversaries in her path. Chopper was astonished by Carrot's newfound power, which exceeded his expectations. Daifuku, feeling mocked, furiously unleashed his devil fruit power, summoning his genie lamp to strike at Carrot. However, Carrot's plan was to make them destroy each other. The genie's attack missed, prompting Carrot to taunt Daifuku, who in his rage turned on his own crewmates, destroying their ships. Carrot continued to provoke him, forcing Daifuku to attack, causing chaos among his own forces. Jinbei then shared the Moon Lion Sulong transformation legend of the Mink tribe. Under a cloudless full moon night, minks gazing at the full moon would unlock their Sulong form. In this state their eyes turn red, and they lose control, fighting relentlessly until dawn unless they can control it, risking their lives. Impressed by Carrot's abilities, Brook also decided to aid the enemy, running on the surface of the sea and surprising everyone around. Returning to Luffy's battle, even though he had fully recovered his haki, he chose not to use Gear 4th. Instead he sought to find the solution by facing Katakuri's advanced observation haki. Believing that this was the only way to defeat this unprecedentedly powerful opponent, Luffy put himself in the most relaxed state he could attain even when facing incoming attacks. Luffy ate a punch directly, but he still hasn't figured out the problem. However, this doesn't deter Luffy. He immediately charges forward, but Katakuri sees through all his moves and pushes him away, preventing him from getting close. Katakuri creates numerous threatening attacks to keep Luffy at bay. Meanwhile, the Sunny is being pursued by enemy ships from behind, firing cannons at them. Big Mom has collapsed after her indulgence, craving the cake she hasn't yet tasted. Parasparrow is extremely concerned because it's the first time her hunger has lasted this long. Luckily, Pudding is on her way to deliver the cake. However, the critical issue lies with the cake on Bega's ship. Bege still hasn't given up on his plan to assassinate Big Mom. He initially intended to poison Sanji's cake, but Sanji, true to his chef's pride, refuses to allow such treachery, even if it means defeating their most formidable foe. The Straw Hat crew also rejects using underhanded tactics for victory. Bege finally relents and agrees not to poison the cake since it's delicious enough to satisfy Big Mom's hunger. Sanji hopes they can reach Nami and the others in time to save them. At this moment they've managed to pierce through the upper layer of enemies thanks to Carrot and Brook clearing the way for the Sunny. Brook uses his music to mesmerize the enemies, making them forget their surroundings, while Carrot continuously moves to disrupt the enemy's steering. However, Carrot is exerting a lot of energy, putting herself in danger. Daifuku's genie lamp catches up with them and he attacks, but Brook arrives just in time to whisk Carrot away to safety. With their mission excellently executed, they quickly return to the Sunny. Nami is overjoyed to see Carrot back safely. However, due to exhaustion, Carrot requests some rest and she heads inside. Meanwhile, Prometheus and Zeus have returned and Big Mom takes action. In her hunger-induced frenzy, she chases after the Sunny, pushing them into a perilous situation. Big Mom leaps onto the ship and calls out the Straw Hats by name, blaming them for the destruction, sending fear rippling through everyone on board. Jinbei realizes the situation has escalated. He instructs everyone to abandon ship. Big Mom, in her search for the cake, destroys parts of the ship. Luckily, the Sunny is made from the world's hardest wood, so it withstands the assault. Luffy, amidst this chaos, struggles to awaken his dormant strength as Rayleigh had advised. He understands that his haki needs to become stronger in life or death situations. Luffy pushes himself to the brink, willing to reach the threshold of death to catch up with the vast difference in power between him and Katakuri. Katakuri noticed Luffy's actions and asked what he was up to. It seemed that the process of awakening his power differed significantly from Katakuri's, so he didn't think Luffy was trying to attain the advanced observation haki. Only by glimpsing the future as Katakuri did, Luffy might have a chance to defeat this billion belly beast. Katakuri continued his relentless assault on Luffy, aiming to crush him completely, but Luffy managed to endure the blows. Luffy's resilience forced his brain to focus intensely. Katakuri unleashed a new technique, hardening his finger and firing it like a gun, channeling the attack towards Luffy. Applying his ability to see 1 second into the future, Katakuri continuously aimed his shots at Luffy's predicted movements. It was at this moment that Luffy exclaimed that Katakuri was truly formidable. To heighten the tension, Katakuri transformed one of his arms into a 6-barreled gun, aiming it straight at Luffy. Despite the pressure, Luffy continued to concentrate, intensely determined to face the challenge head-on. Meanwhile on the sea, Big Mom was questioning the whereabouts of the hidden wedding cake as her son claimed it was still with them. She warned that if he lied, she would have to kill her own son. Sparrow, who remembered Big Mom's wrath when she was hungry, grew increasingly fearful. Big Mom directed her anger at Jimbei, but he remained calm and resolute. However, even Jimbei's resolve wasn't enough to deter her power, and he was ultimately struck down into the sea. Big Mom continued her quest to find her wedding cake, putting Carrot in grave danger as she was still on board the ship. Nami and Chopper tried to intervene, but Big Mom managed to land a powerful strike, setting the ship ablaze once more. Nami was also in danger and had to rely on Chopper's transformation to protect herself. At this point, Jimbei, who had managed to recover somewhat, used his fishman karate to create a powerful water stream, using the seawater to weaken Big Mom's devil fruit powers. He then launched a devastating attack on her, sending her tumbling overboard. Jimbei instructed everyone to quickly stabilize the situation and evacuate the ship while preventing further damage to the Sunny. Big Mom threatened to cut the ship into pieces, prompting Nami to try to win over Zeus. However, Zeus refused her and released an electrical surge. But Brook, being a soul, was unharmed and managed to divide Zeus into two. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Nami summoned a powerful thunderbolt which zapped Big Mom and left her incapacitated. Luffy, amidst the relentless onslaught of bullets, found himself unable to evade. With no other option, he resorted to using his own body to punch the bullets back towards his attackers, showcasing incredible resilience. Katakuri acknowledged Luffy's determination but didn't let up. He followed up with a powerful kick aimed directly at Luffy's face. Luffy, despite his pain, refused to back down. Katakuri continued his assault, generating mochi-based fists from a single piece of mochi. These fists were coated with advanced Haoshoku haki, making them even more formidable. The battle between the two fighters intensified as Luffy struggled to endure the overwhelming force coming from Katakuri. Katakuri's devil fruit power was indeed extraordinary. Although belonging to the Paramecia category, it exhibited Logia-like capabilities, allowing him to separate his body parts much like Logia users. Luffy, after enduring a series of attacks, managed to evade a few blows and found a glimmer of hope at the end of the battle. Both fighters continued their exchange of techniques. Luffy's punches were unguided, while Katakuri maintained his cool, delivering blows with finesse. During the battle, Flamp, another one of Big Mom's daughters who had a deep admiration for Katakuri, secretly assisted her older brother. She hoped that by helping Katakuri defeat Luffy, she would receive praise from her brother. Katakuri was an ideal role model for the 38 younger sisters, and it was natural for them to adore him. However, Flamp grew increasingly irritated seeing her brother struggling against such a stubborn opponent. Luffy, with his eyes closed, focused on sensing the changes in his opponent. Despite being continuously punched, he remained calm. Katakuri, realizing Luffy's strategy, was surprised. He understood that Luffy's closed eyes were a sign of concentration, and he sensed the potential threat Luffy posed. Katakuri acknowledged that if he allowed the battle to drag on, Luffy could become an unpredictable and formidable adversary, forcing him to re-evaluate his approach. Katakuri continued to use his mochi to pin Luffy to the wall, preventing any escape. He relentlessly attacked Luffy, landing blows from both the front and back. Luffy struggled to break free, but he was unable to avoid the barrage of blows. He cried out in pain, unable to overcome Katakuri's advanced observation haki that allowed him to predict Luffy's movements. In this dire situation, Luffy remembered Rayleigh's teachings, particularly the importance of having a clear purpose for each attack and not resorting to reckless assaults. With these lessons in mind, Luffy realized the significance of not attacking aimlessly. He closed his eyes once more, focusing on sensing the fluctuations in the air around him. This marked a pivotal moment in Luffy's battle against Katakuri. On the other side, after Nami's electric shock overwhelmed Zeus, he dissipated, causing Big Mom to almost fall into the sea. Fortunately, Prometheus arrived just in time to rescue her from drowning. Brook managed to capture Zeus and intended to present him as a gift to Nami. Nami threatened Zeus, leaving him pale-faced and terrified. Big Mom's recovery, and she continued her pursuit. Meanwhile, Luffy remembered all the knowledge he had acquired and actively concentrated, allowing him to withstand Katakuri's relentless attacks. Katakuri noticed that Luffy was gradually gaining the ability to see the future. Similar to himself, he intensified his attacks, trying to prevent Luffy from foreseeing his moves. However, Luffy started sensing Katakuri's attacks and managed to block them, surprising Katakuri. Acknowledging Luffy's rare and exceptional development, Katakuri continued his relentless assault, hoping to prevent Luffy from seeing the future anymore. He taunted Luffy, believing that Luffy couldn't see as clearly as he could. Despite the constant interference from Katakuri, Luffy persevered, sometimes successfully anticipating the attacks and sometimes failing. During their battle, Katakuri mentioned that the Straw Hat Crew's plan had been exposed, advising Luffy to give up at this point. Switching scenes to Bega's ship, the wedding cake was finally complete, adorned with intricate decorations. Sanji used his culinary expertise to add vibrant flowers around the cake, making it even more appealing. The delicious aroma wafted through the air, tempting those nearby. But they managed to restrain themselves, knowing that the cake was their trump card to escape the territory of the Yonko. Once the cake was finished, everyone collapsed from exhaustion, having pushed themselves to their limits. All hopes were now pinned on whether the Sunny could make it to the rendezvous point. Chopper had also taken a rumble ball, transforming himself to fight back against Big Mom. His brave actions resulted in a direct attack from her, but he refused to give up, shouting defiantly and causing worry among the others. Big Mom became more serious, transforming Prometheus into a smaller sun. Jimbei asserted that at this point the sea wouldn't be effective. Just then the silhouette of a rescue ship appeared on the horizon. Bege rallied the crew, assuring them that he would keep his promise to Sanji, allowing them to escape after Big Mom got her cake. With no objections, they left with pudding according to the plan. Big Mom caught wind of the delectable scent and changed her pursuit towards Bega's ship. Sanji reunited with the rest of the crew, but they chose not to tell him about Pedro's sacrifice. Back with Luffy, he could now clearly see the attacks coming his way, allowing him to dodge a few moves. Katakuri, however, advised Luffy not to get up anymore, but Luffy continued to stand his ground, irritating Katakuri as his advanced observation haki was reaching its peak. However, a third party intervened in the battle with a supersonic tranquilizer arrow. It was too fast for the two combatants to perceive, as someone was watching this fair fight. As a result, Luffy was injected with the tranquilizer, causing him to weaken and leaving him vulnerable to a piercing strike from Katakuri. Bege expressed his gratitude to the Straw Hat Crew for Sanji saving his wife, and he decided to lure Big Mom's children away to help relieve the pressure on the Sunny. Sanji informed them that their original plan had been compromised, so they needed to come up with a different way to rescue Luffy. Despite being hit, Sanji made Katakuri feel uncomfortable because he slipped and fell instead of being defeated, frustrating Katakuri. Flamp, after injecting the tranquilizer into Luffy, laughed gleefully, thinking she had helped her older brother. Although he wanted to end it quickly, he didn't want it to finish the way it did earlier. But come on, Katakuri, Luffy is just a victim here. There's no need to get angry at him. Luffy, still affected by the drug, could only stand there letting Katakuri continue to land blows. When Katakuri finally stopped, Luffy had lost consciousness. Outside, Smoothie's ship led the chase after the Straw Hat Crew instead of her older brother, who was pursuing Bege. Oven, now in awe, ordered the island's residents to either break all mirrors or throw them into the sea, leaving only one intact mirror. Unfortunately, if Luffy managed to escape Katakuri's clutches, they would only have one mirror left to use. Meanwhile, Katakuri contemplated the moment when Luffy slipped and fell without an apparent reason. His pride didn't allow him to accept victory in such a way. Luffy had disappointed him by being easily defeated after Katakuri had briefly acknowledged his skill. Katakuri waited for Luffy to regain consciousness, not willing to end the fight prematurely. When Luffy stirred, Flamp intended to inject him with the tranquilizer once more. However, in his weakened state, Luffy collapsed to the ground before she could act. Katakuri witnessed this and finally understood the truth. Hearing the foolish laughter and seeing Luffy's trembling legs, Katakuri realized his mistake. He walked towards his younger sister and blamed himself for not recognizing the truth sooner, allowing his opponent to be fatally struck. Flamp, expecting praise from her brother, received none. Katakuri pierced his own body to level the playing field. This action forced him to cast aside his idealized image, revealing his true grotesque mouth. Flamp, having lost her perfect brother, and mocked Katakuri. However, he paid no attention, approaching Luffy slowly. The spectators, now aware of Katakuri's true face, disrupted the intense battle between the two powerful fighters. Luffy empathized with Katakuri's decision and released Conqueror's haki, shattering the surrounding space. Weaker individuals succumbed to this overwhelming aura, falling to the ground. Witnessing Luffy's Conqueror's haki, Flamp was astonished and fainted away. On another front, Bege planned to dock at a nearby island, but Chiffon intervened. She feared the island was too close, possibly allowing Big Mom to catch up with the Straw Hat Crew after her meal. So she urged the ship to sail farther away to ensure their safety. Simultaneously, Sanji separated from the group to rescue the ship's captain. Their original plan had been compromised and they needed to devise an alternative strategy to reunite with Luffy. Meanwhile, Big Mom's second daughter initiated her attack. With her ability to steal water from others and strengthen herself, she continuously assaulted the Sunny. This power seemed limitless as long as she had victims to absorb water from. Her relentless strikes instilled fear among the crew. Fortunately, Nami and Jinbei reacted swiftly, steering the ship away to evade her assaults. In the mirror world, Katakuri apologized for not realizing the truth earlier. Luffy didn't blame himself either, acknowledging that it wasn't his fault for being unable to avoid the attack. Hearing this, Katakuri confirmed that he no longer considered Luffy weaker than himself. Bringing a smile to Luffy's face, they both roared and charged at each other. Unleashing their most potent punches, Katakuri's longer arm allowed him to land the first hit. However, Luffy extended his arm to strike Katakuri in the face. It seemed that Katakuri was also enjoying the thrill of battling a formidable opponent like Luffy. At this point, both warriors were determined to have the most equitable match possible and were exploring ways to overcome each other. Katakuri, with his ability to foresee the future and his superior Haoshoku haki, still had the upper hand over Luffy, sending Luffy flying. However, Luffy closed his eyes, relying on his enhanced observation haki to sense Katakuri's movements and counter his attacks. Even though Luffy, a notorious bounty head worth 1 billion, used his advanced Haoshoku haki to minimize the damage, Katakuri's blows were still powerful. With unyielding determination, Luffy charged forward. Following Rayleigh's advice that each punch must have a specific purpose, Luffy managed to deceive Katakuri, landing a blow and receiving a double-strength hit in return. From this point on, they engaged in a back-and-forth battle, utilizing their Haoshoku haki to predict each other's moves. Katakuri found himself panting heavily, realizing the immense strength Luffy possessed. Despite being aware that Luffy was the one who threatened his mother, Katakuri seemed to forget his own identity as one of the top commanders of the Big Mom Pirates when facing Luffy. It was a perplexing situation, a feeling of battling someone truly formidable. After every exchange, Katakuri lowered his head to the ground, urging Luffy to continue fighting while accepting Luffy's challenge. In return, Luffy responded with his most potent form yet. A state not of a round, bulky figure but a new form named Snake Man, resembling a snake's agility. In this form, Luffy admitted that he still hadn't reached Katakuri's level of advanced Haoshoku haki observation. However, he compensated for this by utilizing incredible speed that even Katakuri couldn't perceive. The first punch was easily evaded by Katakuri, but Luffy followed it up with another punch that came out of nowhere. Each time Luffy's initial punch missed, the second punch found its target, and Katakuri used his observation haki to figure out Luffy's tactics. This special attack relentlessly pursued its target until it struck. Katakuri managed to avoid the attacks and maintained his composure even as he was sent flying more than 100 meters by the sheer force of Luffy's blow. This battle was a clash of incredible speed, and Katakuri clearly had the advantage. Luffy couldn't retract his arm in time and he took a powerful, heavily reinforced punch directly to his abdomen, unable to escape. This was Katakuri's most devastating technique up to that point, leaving a massive crater in the ground, several meters deep. Despite the enormous damage, Luffy was remarkably unfazed, even laughing after a few hours. The two continued to exchange blows, each targeting the other with precision. Katakuri used his observation haki to predict the future and adapted to Luffy's tactics. Luffy unleashed a new technique in his Snake Man form, an incredibly swift and unpredictable fighting style. Katakuri quickly adapted and attempted to strike Luffy with various attacks. Understanding the mechanics of this new form, the battle intensified as Luffy continued to improve his abilities and Katakuri was fascinated by the challenge. Luffy eventually overwhelmed Katakuri with his barrage of attacks, leading to a climactic showdown between their most powerful techniques. The impact shattered the space around them and both blows hit their mark. Both warriors fell, Luffy losing his Snake Man form and falling unconscious, while Katakuri also collapsed shortly after. The situation outside escalated in tension as Bega's group was nearing their goal and the Sunny managed to overcome dangers to reach Luffy. However, if they headed towards Cacao Island at this moment, they would be surrounded, so Brook decided to approach Smoothie for negotiations, a move that earned him a disapproving bonk on the head from Nami. Despite the odds, Nami remained confident that her captain would overcome all challenges and return safely. Sometime later, Luffy regained consciousness and sat up. Seeing Katakuri still unconscious, Luffy felt relieved because now, not only was he unable to talk, but the billion-belly bounty monster was also unconscious. Luffy tried to muster up his last bit of strength and stood up threatening Katakuri. In response he received a question from Katakuri. Will you come back here one day to defeat Big Mom? Luffy, determined as ever, replied that he would return because he would become the Pirate King. Hearing this, Katakuri praised Luffy for seeing a future so far ahead. He then did something unprecedented. He sat down in front of Luffy. He knew that one day not too far in the future, they would have a rematch just like today. Luffy appreciated this gesture and thanked Katakuri for covering up his mouth. Then he found his way out. Luckily at this moment Peckham's appeared along with Brûlé, who was crying for her brother's failure. And the episode concludes here today. Sincerely thank you all for your interest and support. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to motivate me to create more great content. Goodbye and see you in the next videos.